I'm excited to share with you all that I've contributed a chapter to the newly published Anxiety Relief Handbook. The handbook provides a unique window into 11 highly effective complementary therapies for you to sample on your quest to ease anxiety. The ebook is available on my website, happynurse.com.au/anxiety relief handbook.
I also love people doing something that I don't see a lot of, but even you and I've just touched on in conversation today, is key words that mean things to you personally. So when I say the words like love, authenticity, reciprocity, etc., these are some of the words that mean so much to me as an individual and has a big expansion into all areas of my world.
Welcome to the Happy Nurse podcast. Nurses are the backbone of healthcare, always there to care for strangers as if they were one of their own, often forsaking special moments with their own family in order to ensure another's loved one is being cared for. As nurses, self-care is essential. I am Elena Mullery, nurse educator and self-care mentor for nurses. I'm an RN with 20 years of clinical experience. I have first-hand experience of stress and burnout. It was this experience which led me to develop a passion for personal development and pursue the study of mindfulness, meditation, hypnotherapy, and neuro-linguistic programming. Each episode, I will be promoting self-care strategies to those who always care for others. I have broken self-care down into 5 aspects: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and indulgence, to make it easy to ensure all your self-care needs are being met. Each episode, I will interview nurses and self-care gurus from around the world to help you with each aspect of your self-care. Welcome to the Happy Nurse podcast with Elena Mullery. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Happy Nurse podcast. I'm Elena, as you all know, and today I am joined again by the beautiful Michelle. Michelle was on the show a couple of months ago now, and we had a great chat back then. And I've invited her back on the show because during that podcast, we started speaking about values and decided that it was a whole podcast episode on its own. So here we are today delivering that content we promised you back then. So Michelle is a holistic health practitioner with over 17 years of clinical experience. She is a speaker and coach who is also the author of a 3-times Amazon bestseller, The Mastery of Wellness. Michelle specializes in helping people who reclaim even who they truly are, gain their energy back, overcome overwhelm, tiredness, anxiety, and sadness to create a life that makes them happy. Welcome back to the show, Michelle.
Thank you so much, lovely. I'm excited to be back again.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you back. And I've been really looking forward to this conversation because we mentioned it briefly in the last episode you were in. So yeah, it's exciting to actually delve deep into this world of values and unbox it even and explain what it is to all the listeners.
Yeah, exactly. I love when you and I speak, it's just this natural and organic progression into all of these beautiful worlds of, tools and expertise and life experience and stuff that, I feel is valuable to one another, because isn't that what we're here for anyway, to help each other?
Yeah, definitely. We're definitely kindred spirits and have a lot of the same beliefs, that's for sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
We are all here to help each other, definitely. It's that community. It's what we all want. We're humans. We want connection with others.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important in itself, because at the end of the day, we are tribal creatures. We actually need each other. We need connection. We need community. We need those people that allow us to be the full expressions of ourselves, however that truly looks like. And, everyone needs to find their tribe, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with nurses, I think we are quite a tribe, and a lot of us
Mm.
can become quite close, and we form very special bonds with each other. I know I've got nursing colleagues from back in Scotland. In fact, some of my good friends are the girls I did my training with, over 20 years ago. So, yeah, nursing definitely does lend itself to that community.
And I think that's so important too, because I know we're specifically talking about nurses here, but I think this actually transcends beyond that realm into all industries, really. There's a sense of understanding and connection because nobody else lives and experiences things exactly the way you do unless you've actually walked in those shoes. So there's a level of, compassion, a level of connection, a level of, authentic, genuinely getting each other because you've lived it.
Yeah, definitely. And they speak about people having work husbands or work wives,
Yes.
and it's true. You have a very different relationship, and you probably become a different person at work to what you are at home. I know I've spoke to friends, and they've been experiencing their partners being at home, during COVID, and people are having to work from home, and they're like, my goodness, who is that person? They're a very different persona when they're at home to what they are when they're on work mode. So yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it?
That's actually quite fascinating in itself too, because sometimes I wonder whether we create these different personas because maybe that comes under a values thing, or maybe is it a fear-based thing too? Like people afraid to be the full versions of themselves in case it's not accepted, whether that's in a professional capacity or in, your personal world as well. So sometimes I get curious about things like that as to what's happening there. Like, do you feel like you can't be a certain way? So, I'll use myself as an example. In my day-to-day life, I will swear fairly frequently. But when I'm on, podcasts or things like that, I notice depending on the caliber that I'm speaking to, I'll tone that down. And sometimes I'm like, is that me honoring where I'm at, as in who I'm speaking to, or is that me not allowing a piece of myself to come through? And I feel that that's where we get to explore our own inner self. Am I being completely different in different areas, and why?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? And it's that acceptance. You don't want to do something that's going to make you not be accepted. It goes back to the tribe, we don't want to be ostracized.
Yeah, exactly. So it's that connection again, which is interesting too, because I think it probably even goes right back into childhood. Like maybe we were segregated or we were bullied or teased for being different or for doing things a different way. And that can ripple through into our adult life.
Yeah, definitely. Our childhood is fundamental, isn't it? It plays a huge part in how we are as adults. And I think it's not until you start actually digging in there and exploring it all that you realize just what an impact your childhood has actually had on what you're doing today I'm 40. So, it's been quite a journey while I've discovered all this and just how much of an impact my childhood is still having on my life today.
It's massive, isn't it? Like, I think that's actually something to bring up because a lot of our values and beliefs actually go right back into childhood. And even if it was things that weren't pleasant, that also shapes our beliefs and our morals and our inner values. And, we all have a code of conduct, so to speak, I believe. That's kind of like our own inner blueprint. And it can stem right back into things that we've experienced. And it doesn't matter what polarity, like if you've experienced traumatic things, you can move on the exact opposite end of the spectrum and create a value around that. Or even if you've experienced things that you're like, oh, I want to emulate that. Either way, it's helped guide and shape what you feel is, you know, a belief or a value for you.
Yeah, definitely. And we come into this world brand new without a manual. You know, we make it up as we go along. We pick up mannerisms, we pick up beliefs, and it's all based around that. The caregivers, our parents, siblings, it's that nature or nurture question as well that comes into play here too, doesn't it? So it's fascinating. I love this stuff. I could talk about it all day.
I know, me too. I think this is why you and I have that little special bond that we've got there, Elena. We're like, oh, a juicy topic. Let's pull that thread and see how far that unravels.
Yeah, but I think it's a good starting point for the values, because like they're obviously where our first core values will come from. It's from our parents and those who we were close to as children. So understanding what they are and just how much they're impacting our life today, and if they're actually in alignment with what we are feeling or believing our values are at this stage in our life, if that makes sense, you know, because it's when they're out of alignment, we start to get anxiety and depression. So yeah, it's a fascinating subject.
I think so. And I feel like we've just naturally gone to the beginning of all of that, because some of our beliefs and core values are learnt, and some of them don't even work for us. So it's kind of like wearing clothes that don't fit you anymore. So we get to look at that and be like, actually, does this work for me? Does this move me in the trajectory that I want to go in my life? Or is it holding me back in some way?
Yeah, definitely. I think I shared the story last time we were on the podcast about my homesickness.
Yeah.
So I won't go down that again. If you want to know about that story, you'll get it in the previous episode with Michelle. But that was when I realized that I was living a life that was outside of my own core values. And I was putting on all these masks. And like we were talking about earlier, you know, being someone different for different people. And it wasn't till I actually came back to my own core values and did some work around that I realized that I was homesick for me and who I really was at my core.
Yeah. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to remember too, because at the end of the day, I feel that when we're fully being ourselves, who we truly are, without trying to impress other people or worrying about any other opinions, then that's when we actually get to have space in our world to invite the right people that are meant to be there for us. When we have the courage to really be who we truly are without worrying about, will it upset people, or will there be negative consequences, or actually, no, flip that coin right over and realize that when you're really you attract the right people into your world.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it does. It's like attracts like, as they say. And I found that myself, you know, naturally some friendships have faded away. Like I wouldn't say they've gone, but I just don't see these people as much because I've obviously changed as a person, and I found a new tribe that I gel with more nowadays. So yeah, it is. You have to surround yourself with those like-minded people.
Agreed. And I think there's a natural growth and evolution there for each of us too. So I think, I don't know, for me, as I've gotten older and gone through, you know, life's trials and tribulations, I feel like I've become more me in that process. And then I think there's a natural fading away of people, and then an attraction. Like you said, it's like that magnet where you draw in the right people, and then it's more aligned, it's more true, it's more real, and it sits with your core values more too.
And it's not that you don't associate with these people anymore. It's just you've taken this natural progression and evolution. And yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like, because we've tried on the different outfits, like you're saying, with the masks and the facades, and sometimes we have to live up to expectations because of work demands, or, you know, right back into family demands when you were young, or whatever it might be. And then as we get older, we're like, wait a minute, that doesn't actually work for me. And then you get to create a blueprint of what really does work for you, which is one of the terminologies I use for core values with clients. It's like they're your GPS coordinates. And I think that for me, that resonates, using the term GPS, because how useless is that device without an address?
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah.
Like the piece of equipment is, you could go anywhere, but it's not helping you. As soon as you put an address in that sucker, it sets a path and you know exactly where you need to go in order to get to your destination. And I liken that very much to life, because then you get to look at what's an opportunity, or what's a roadblock, or is that aligned in the direction that's going to get you towards your end goal, or is it just noise? So for me, that's my visualization. My brain works in a lot of pictures. So it's like, am I typing in my address? Is it getting me closer to my destination, or is it taking me away from my destination?
I love that. It's so true. If you know what your core values are and you're living your life in alignment with them, everything just seems so much easier, and the roadblocks aren't there. You just cruise down the freeway.
Yeah. Or at least they're more, I wouldn't say easy is the right word, because it doesn't matter. Life can throw you curveballs all the time. But if you know what you stand for, then I think you can traverse the trickiness with maybe a bit more grace, because there's more of an understanding of self.
Yeah, it is. It's that understanding of self, isn't it? And knowing what's driving you and what is important to you.
Absolutely.
If you enjoy meditating, or you would like to give meditation a try, why not head on over to happynurse.com.au/meditation to download my free guided meditation for stress and anxiety relief. It's 12 minutes of pure self-care. One of the biggest things that I've struggled with in the last 12 years is being a mum, and the pressure, especially the external pressure, and everyone's opinions of how you should be raising your children. When you instinctively have it inside you and you know what's good for your child, but sometimes some people think some of your parenting ideas are a bit crazy. But as long as you, and this can go for anything, anything you're doing in your life, as long as you know why you're doing it and it sits well with you in your heart, then you're doing the right thing.
Exactly. And I think that's a big key there, is honoring what's true for you, what's in your heart, what you know intuitively is right for you and your family. Because I always say to people, and it's interesting sometimes because it sparks great debates, which I quite enjoy, but I always say there is actually no such thing as right and wrong, just right or wrong for each individual. And I truly believe that's the case, because, what's right for you and your children in that example is not going to be right for the next mother and her children. And that's perfect, and that's okay, because we're not all interchangeable. We are all completely unique individuals. And it's the same with our core values too, because what you value, the next person might not at all. And that's not to say it's right or wrong. It's just a different preference. It's a different life experience and journey.
I always say the biggest killer of joy is judgment and expectation. And since I realized that, it's been a big game changer, because it works both ways. You can be subject to judgment and expectation, but you can also put judgment and expectation onto other people.
Mm-hmm.
And in both ways, you can totally destroy your joy.
Oh, 100%. And I think you've hit a nail on the head there, because it's so true. And I think we project this onto each other, sometimes unknowingly, because say you value alone quality time with your partner, but they're really focused on, their job or something like that. And then there's that miscommunication and misalignment, because there's an expectation that's never been spoken. And it doesn't mean that either of you is right or wrong. It just shows what you're prioritizing, and you get to have really open, honest conversations in a courageous way. But I think you're right. It does kill joy, because we project our own values onto everyone around us and believe that they either have the same values or know what your values are and are taking them into consideration.
Sometimes we don't even know what our own values are. So we're not even aware that we are doing this and where it's coming from. But we feel like we have the right to judge other people or to expect them to behave in another way, in some certain way even. And it's really interesting. And it's all coming from those subconscious core values that are running the program in the back.
Right. Isn't it? And you know what? I heard the saying many years ago, and I still feel like there's truth to it for me. So I'd love to hear how it sits for you when I say it. The saying goes, all judgments are unmet needs.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
And I feel like that gives you opportunity to reflect on, well, first of all, do I have an unmet need in myself, or with this person, with this job, with this blah, 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 blah. So you get to check in, because I think that, we could go down a rabbit hole of judgments next. Look out.
Yeah.
But it brings back to, first of all, unpacking your own core values and really knowing yourself intricately, and then being able to have those conversations with your family, with your friends, with the people that may need to know these things, because I think it's an important part of any relationship dynamic to those that are close to us, that we can express our needs in an equal give and take.
And when we know ourselves and know what's important to us, we're in a much better position to offer more compassionate relationships with others. Would that make sense?
Yeah. We get to understand each other on a deeper level, I feel.
Yeah, I can't think how to word it, but yeah, that's kind of how it's coming through. And I think as nurses, we are very good at not being judgmental, because we meet such a wide variety of people, but they all get treated the same at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah. And the things you guys see and do, I take my hat off to you guys all the time.
And I know at work I'm like that, but at home, when I'm not being a nurse, I can find myself being a bit judgmental of people at times, or, you have that expectation there. And it's interesting just turning it back on yourself and thinking, why am I behaving like this towards them? And turning it, having a look inside to see, as you said, what unmet need is in there.
Yeah. And it's that self-exploration. And I think that's a component with core values too, because I've been doing core values for well over a decade in so many different capacities, and we'll touch on that as we chat. But it's not like you just do it and it's done and you don't have to ever worry about it again. You're not going to be the same person in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. Like, it's something that you keep adding on and subtracting from, and it's a constant refining as you continue to evolve as a person as well. So I also wanted to chat with you, because I'm curious before I share how I work with core values with clients and workshops and how I sort of, intertwine all of that together. How have you learnt, your core values and, what sort of tools and things did you do for you?
I remember doing it first. Oh gosh, must be 6 or 7 years ago. And I did it the Dr. John DeMartini way.
Ah, yeah,
Cool.
cool.
He's got that book, is it The Values Factor?
Mm-hmm.
But like you were just saying, what my values were back then are very different to what my values are today, because I've obviously been on this life experience since. I've gone through a divorce. I'm now a single mom. I've got a business. And as life has changed, so have my values. So, and what's important to me. But I tend to use Brené Brown's way of doing it with her list of values, and I use that with my clients at the moment.
Oh, I love Brené Brown.
Yeah,
I have
awesome.
such a girl crush on her.
Yeah, so have I.
She is the bomb. So I love that. And, I think it's so true with you sharing, you've gone through all of these life changes, which means you're actually not the same woman that you were back then.
I'm not the same woman I was 6 months ago, and I'll openly acknowledge that,
Yeah, me too.
And the biggest personal development tool I've had in the past couple of years is dating. Oh my God, that's just, thrown up so much.
Oh, that's a whole nother world, isn't it, darling?
That's another podcast episode in itself.
Oh, we're going to have to do a whole nother podcast on that little chestnut alone, right?
Yeah. That'll be audiences only. Hey, so.
Well, why not? We've both had, I didn't go through a divorce because I wasn't actually married, but I got out of a long-term relationship that ended about 2 years ago, but we were together for about 10 years. So, I've changed a lot as a person throughout that relationship, and especially coming out of it. And so, navigating similar terrain as yourself. It's a weird world, isn't it?
It's very bizarre and very different. Like yourself, I had been in a relationship for 16 years. So compared to the year 2000, we're in completely different territory now. And it's.
And it's really funny because I feel like we can actually intertwine core values with that, because we know what we want and we know our worth, and I hate to put it out there, but we do have expectations. There's a standard that you won't settle for less. And I think that's an important element of, core values with moving into that next chapter of your life and inviting, I like to call it, without being too airy-fairy, like your sacred union, your teammate, soulmate, true love, whatever terminology really works for you there. But it's like, I feel like all of the work that you've done brings you to that level of, all right, I'm ready for it now, bring it in.
Yeah, definitely. And the funny thing is, looking back now, as I say, it's been the biggest personal development tool. I thought I was ready a couple of years ago, and I clearly wasn't. So I'll openly admit I wasn't. And now I feel like I'm ready. But
oh, I love that. I feel like we're going to deviate onto a whole nother podcast topic. Let's
pull it back to the core.
We're just setting up for number 3.
Definitely. Yeah, that one could be interesting.
Yeah, it could be. That could be a real raw one. But I feel like that's an important part, because, one of my core values is, as you know from previous discussions, authenticity and being really real. And I say that from such a heart space, because I can't handle the fair weather fluff. Like, that just bothers me. It grates me. It's like, we have so much more to offer one another than just, the weather's lovely today. Come on, people. Like, let's get into the juice of life and let's actually get into the realness. And then that ties back in with, you know, my core values is, you know, something that I really value is that depth, is that realness, is that let's actually talk about stuff that impacts and helps one another, not just, you know, the superficial stuff.
Yeah, and it's having the courage to be authentic as well. Because like we said, you know, it's all coming back to the same thing that we were talking about at the start, that feeling okay with not wearing those masks and having to turn up as these different people in these different situations. I mean, yeah, you can't just meet someone and then completely dump all your stuff on them. There's a fine line, but it's being comfortable with who you are and in your own skin. I mean, I know I've had a lot of body image issues in the past because I'm not the kind of girl you see in magazines, you know. So that has really held me back when it's come to putting myself out there dating. And I've had to do a lot of work around that myself. But it's come back. One of my core values is compassion, and it's compassion with myself too. And I've learned to love the body that I'm in and honor it and accept myself for who I am.
And I feel like that's actually a massive life lesson because, you know, I, like yourself, I don't look like any of the girls in the magazines and all of the things. Like, come on. Does anyone? I don't even think the women that are in these photoshopped images even look like that. But I can definitely, you know, feel I've experienced some pretty massive stuff with my own body image. I mean, I developed eating disorders from the age of 13. And so all the way through into my 20s, I had to do a really big work on coming home to myself and finding, I found for me, because gratitude is another one of my big core values, is finding the things to be grateful for. Like, I'm so grateful that I have an able body that allows me to do all of the things that I love doing. And to use a friend of mine, he's an impartial quadriplegic, and I look at him and, you know, he's never let that stop him, and he's, you know, gone far beyond the realms that anyone thought he would ever be capable of. And I can appreciate his journey, but then bring back that element to myself and be reminded of how blessed I am, because I think we tend to look at the things that aren't right with us in comparison. I think we got taught to compare, and I think this comes back to school shit as well, like with grades and with sports, and we're always competing with one another. And then that's transcended into adult life with how we look, how our bodies are, what we're supposed to be, how much money we're supposed to earn, how we're meant to parent, how we're meant to do all of the things. And it's this competition mentality instead of actually, we're all so beautifully individual. You're a once-off, limited edition, never again to be repeated human being. Anyone that gets to stand next to you is so blessed.
Yeah, that's so right. And you've just made me think of a meme or a quote or something. I don't know what you'd call it.
I love that I bring the memes and quotes out in you.
I saw on Facebook the other day, you know how things just really resonate with you? And I thought, oh, that's so true. And it said, imagine how many industries would go bankrupt if tomorrow every woman woke up and loved the body that they have.
Oh,
yeah. And it's so true. And it all goes back to the values. We're being sold these bullshit values by these external influences who are trying to sell us a product. Mm-hmm. And it's eating away at our self-esteem and pulling us away from what is actually important to us. And that's where all this anxiety comes from, because we're becoming so distracted from our own values and buying into, I don't know if I mentioned it in the last podcast, there's a guy, I speak about him a lot. He's awesome. I think he's amazing. He wrote this book called Lost Connections, Johann Hari. And the way he describes values is, he says we've been sold these fast food values, you know. Yes. They're values that we've been fed by external influences, and they're not actually true to us. They're these, junk food, fast food values. And that's where a lot of this disconnect is coming from with our true selves.
Oh, I like that. And I think that is exceptionally true as well. And so I'm sure there's people listening at this stage that are like, okay, cool, talking about values. How do I figure out what mine are? And I want to preface before I jump into, some of the many ways that I do it with clients is there is so many ways to explore it. Like you just mentioned before, Dr. John Demartini and, Brené Brown. And there's so many other things like free resources online. For myself, I started doing it with experts like Paul Chek and JP Sears and, a bunch of other, health and wellness professionals way back when. And then over the years with doing courses and my own personal development and professional development, like I kept adding layers into it. So I like to intertwine both hemispheres of your brain so that you're using the logical and analytical and understanding side, but also with that creative and expressive self. So I think
I like the sound of this.
Yeah, because I find that there's so many, and I think it's important to get the logistics behind it, because I think for the most part, many of us like straightforward things that step by step, right? But then I think that we're missing components of our individual personality if we only look at the linear side of it. So I think that the questions, and for example, there's 17 really, really specific questions that I go through with clients on the logical side of it, that most of the time when I do it with clients, they're like, I really should know the answer to this, but I don't. How do I not know this? And I'm like, wow. Well, that's the point. That's the point of why we're doing this. But then with saying that, I think that there's other elements to intertwine there. So with using your creative expression and diving into that aspect to bring that into the picture as well. And I also love people doing something that I don't see a lot of, but even you and I've just touched on in conversation today, is keywords that mean things to you personally. So when I say the words like love, authenticity, reciprocity, etc., these are some of the words that mean so much to me as an individual and has a big expansion into all areas of my world. So those are just a few little snippets there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Words are so important in this, aren't they? Because we've got so many emotions connected to words, especially certain words, and they can actually trigger us, or they can make us feel compassion, whole, loved, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, words are very, very powerful.
They are. Like, language itself has so much power, and words have, like you said, meaning behind it and emotional meaning behind it. And so a word can actually symbolize so much for each of us.
Yeah, so knowing those core values and being able to connect with those words that are associated with them it's huge in your personal development.
Well, that's it. And it can be as simple as reminding yourself to come back to yourself. So for me, I write lists every week of like things that I've got to do and stuff that I'm working on, and, it keeps me in alignment. I'm a list person. The top of my week, I will write like some of the core value words that are in relation to that week. And I've got other like drawings and stuff that sit on my fridge that I see every day that are related to my core values. So I'm constantly reminded all the time in my day-to-day life of what is important to me, how do I stay true to myself, and how do I bring that into the next piece of my life personally and professionally.
Yeah, having those words as reminders are so powerful.
I'm actually curious too, because I know that in our conversations you're saying how important core values are, and obviously it's something that's, you know, important to both of us. But how or why do you feel core values and living and constantly refining your values is important to you as to how you've gotten to this point in your life?
Well, I realized that when I was in that spiral of anxiety and like burnout, it was a lot of the contributing factor was because I was so out of alignment with my own values. And it wasn't until I came back and realized what they were and started living a life in alignment with them that it's like freedom. It's the only way I can describe it. You know, I feel happy, I feel content, and I'm confident in myself and who I am because I know what's driving me, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And I feel like you surmised that really well with freedom, because that feels very congruent for me, because there is this sense of freedom when you are fully being you and allowing that to not just shine, because you know how people are like, just shine and be you, and it's kind of a bit of a thing, but I think it's missing the depth there, because when you're really being you, then there's no false pretenses.
And you don't, sorry, I've butted in.
Yeah, no, go for it.
You don't come away from a conversation thinking, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or you don't find yourself telling white lies. Like, you know, there's none of that goes on. You're just you, and you're happy in who you are. And if people don't like me, well, do you know what? You're not everyone's cup of tea, and you can't be everyone's cup of tea. So fair enough. If you don't like me, that's fine. But I forgot where I was going with this. I've had a complete mind blank. I had something really profound to say as well, and it's gone.
That's always the worst, isn't it? You're like, I have a point, and it's really, it's going to be potent, and it's going to hit everything home, and then poof, it's gone.
It's disappeared.
That's okay. It'll come back to you.
It will.
But I do fully agree with you with that, because, and you shouldn't be everyone's cup of tea, because then that means you're not really being you. If you're just, you know, I think there's a difference between sometimes we have to, you know, be, not so much that we have to be a certain way, but there's a level of respect and, you know, being civil and courteous towards one another, because maybe you need to work with someone in a professional capacity that maybe you would never associate with in your personal life. There's a difference between, you know, being professional in that respect to pretending to be someone that you're not, or just around everybody and, you know, being everyone's friend and changing your personality constructs just in order to fit in, or instead of actually just being who you are and allowing yourself to be that fully. So, you know, I like that you say, you know, everyone's cup of tea, and because I'm quite a visual person, I'm like, yeah, I don't really want tea. I think I'd prefer a hot chocolate. Thanks, Elena.
I'm Scottish. It's always tea in Scotland.
I know.
I never drank coffee till I came to Australia.
I'm not a coffee drinker. Like, I don't mind a nice tea, but I'm a good chai that goes down all right too. But yeah, I'm not a huge hot drink person.
That's okay. We're all different.
Exactly. See, not everyone's cup of tea.
Exactly. And it's being okay with the fact that you're not everyone's cup of tea, because that's where, if you're not happy with it, or like content with being not everyone's cup of tea. I don't know. So I'm still trying to get this point out. It's really struggling.
going to bother you.
No, it's coming. It's coming. That's when we go into that people-pleasing mode.
Yeah.
And then we start self-sacrificing. We still start self-sabotaging, and Lauren Bell, who comes on the podcast too, she's a nurse as well and does a lot with self-care for healthcare professionals too. She talks about being over responsible for everyone else because it's that you're taking on stuff for them and doing stuff for them and becoming over responsible. Yes. So yeah, it's really interesting.
And I actually agree, because I think sometimes, especially this can go back into childhood as well, that we can be the fixer, or, the one that dissolves conflict, or the one that, has been in the middle of tricky upbringings. And so therefore in adult life, we want to please everyone because it keeps the peace, or it makes things, happier and nicer. But I think tying in that element of self-sabotage that you briefly touched on there, I think that's actually important with your core values as well, because I do believe there's an element of self-sabotage when people aren't really honoring who they are. And it can be that they're not allowing themselves to fully be themselves. And self-sabotage has so many different elements to it that can take us down a different trajectory there as well. But when we don't honor who we are and we're trying to people please, then I think sabotage can come into it, because it's not fully who you are anyway. And then I think there's a level of belief of, well, maybe we're not good enough, or maybe we're not blah, blah, blah enough to have the thing or the person or the job or the whatever, because we're not accepting ourselves. So therefore we're projecting that others aren't either. And that can tie back into, well, what's your core value there?
Yeah, and it's also that need, we're going back to this tribal thing again, that need for validation and belonging. So that's another reason that, we do these behaviors that can be seen as people pleasing and pushing our boundaries. So yeah, there's another episode again.
Oh, look, we're just creating more and more episodes as we go.
We'll have to start the Elena and Michelle podcast.
Join in. Who knows what depth of subject matter we'll go into next. Yeah, it's true. And, that's an element with the core values too, is that we have to have our tribe. We have to have those safe people, because that's how we survive. I mean, we as human beings, we're actually not designed to survive on our own. We're not solitary creatures. We do need solitude, but we are not solitary creatures. We're not designed to survive on our own. But if we're people pleasing constantly, we're not bringing in the right tribe that is inegrable. God, apparently I can't speak anymore. That's a pivotal part of us stepping into our full expression, is having the right people in our corner that will kick our ass when need be, that will be supportive when need be, that are there for not just the wonderful and glorious things that happen in our world, but are also sitting with us in the depths of despair and sadness and the horrendous things that happen in our life too. Like we want that realness that allows us to really be the core essence of ourselves.
And I think it is when that proverbial hits the fan, and we are in that deep, dark places, that's when you find your tribe, because they will be there for you. And I know going through a divorce, it opened my eyes as to who was actually there for me. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this, if they've been through anything similar, and you're nodding your head, Michelle, so you've obviously experienced it too. But that is when you really find your people, because they're the ones who'll stand there beside you and pull you back out again.
Absolutely. And I think it can be surprising as well who's really there. when that happens, because I know me, and a part of my natural state of being is I am a loving, affectionate, caring person. If someone comes for me to help, I will be there for them. And it was interesting, definitely, like you said, when you're coming out of like a horrendous situation, it's interesting to see that flipped and to find out who's really there. And, you know, for me, some of it was people that I didn't actually expect as well.
Yeah, I was exactly the same. There was some people who really were there for me that I would never have expected them to. Whereas we're going back to this expectation thing again, aren't we? And those that I thought would be there for me weren't. So yeah, it was really interesting.
That's right. And I think that you get to call in the people that are going to have that reciprocity there as well, because I know for me, I've touched on that just briefly before, but that's a massive core value, you know, for me, is I want that reciprocity in the close people in my world, because that to me shows so much depth of character.
It's a very interesting phenomenon, isn't it? The people and how we're all wired differently, and
aren't we just? Yeah. And that's the fascinating thing, isn't it?
And I think, do you know what, while we're speaking about this and relationships and that, and I always talk about the love languages. Have you heard of Gary Chapman? You will have, yeah. And I think when you're in a relationship with a significant other, knowing those love languages are fundamental. Those are your core values. You need to know each other so that you can fill each other's cup up, and you know what each other's expectations are, so no one is feeling like they're not getting what they need.
Oh, it's so true. And I 100% agree with you. Knowing your love languages, knowing your partner's love languages, knowing your core values, knowing your partner's core values, that's so important, because we tend to give love the way that we want to receive love, but that's not necessarily how someone's going to meet you.
Yeah.
To add to that, though, I think it's so imperative to have someone that's going to do the work with you.
Yeah, definitely. You need to both be willing to do the work.
Yeah, because you can do your part and be like, hey, I really want to share what my love languages are and to know what your love languages are, so we can make sure each other's needs are being met here. But if you're not having that met back at you, that's where it can be super tricky. So once again, core values, inviting that reciprocity and the people into your world that are going to meet you where you're at, so you can do the work together.
Yeah. And this is where dating just falls apart.
I love how it's circumnavigated straight back there, Elena. I feel like this is a topic we will have to do a podcast.
We'll have to discuss that one too. Yeah, that's definitely, because I'm sure there's lots of nurses out there who are currently facing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. You know, whether they're single or whether they've, you know, gone through a breakup or gone through a divorce, and, you know, we all experience things in our world that we don't actually plan for. So we can definitely have another conversation about that one.
Yeah, I think that would be a really good one. This podcast kind of taking off on its own now.
It's like we've just set a little snowball from the top of the hill, and now it's just gaining momentum, and here we go.
Yeah, we can keep referring back to the previous ones too. So yeah.
I think it's important to have real talk, because as you know from our conversations, that's something that I froth over. Like, I think it's important. And I also think when people can honestly show up and share their stories and the things that they've experienced, it makes other people feel like they're not so alone. Like, you're not the only person going through this out there. There are other people that have lived it or are living it. And your stories can help be someone's blueprint on how they survive and come out the other side of something that maybe they're really struggling with.
Yeah, that's so true, Michelle. I 100% agree. And you could say one little thing that could completely turn someone else's life around just because they connect with what you're saying. And then, like, I see it with them. Sometimes patients will say things to me, you know, especially older patients, because I love nothing more when I'm at work sometimes. And if we've got old people in, like their stories are fascinating.
They're the best, aren't they?
They're just, they're amazing, these older people. And sometimes they can say something to me and I'm like, wow, that was profound. But to them, it's just some kind of flippant comment, But yeah, there's a few things patients have said to me over the years that have really kind of resonated with me. So yeah, I think, and that's what I want my podcast to be. I want it to be real. I want to discuss real issues, and I seem to be going more and more that way because it is all about looking after ourselves. And if we're able to have these conversations and help other people out, then yeah, that's what I want to do.
And I think that's a beautiful offering as well, because when we get to be real and have honest conversations, then that creates safety and it allows other people to step into feeling stronger within themselves to be able to handle whatever they're experiencing in their life and maybe make that journey a little bit less heavy and a little bit less like they feel like they're on their own.
Maybe it's why reality TV exploded, hey, because people, yeah, who knows?
I love it. Oh, I love how our conversations just...
Yeah, they take off on their own tangents.
It's good. That's why you keep calling me in, because I'm always ready to have a real conversation and to just be open and vulnerable and discuss whatever comes up in an open way. So makes sense.
Yeah, me too. So have you got a free resource to share with the listeners?
I do. I've got a little article that I've put together. It's in relation to, being your true self. And I feel that sometimes we need just like a little checklist that we can run through. So in this article, I go through some of the main things that I see with clients when they feel like they're not fully aligned with themselves, and what the signs and symptoms are that they can experience. Because, while we've talked a lot on core values and, the depths of where this can go in different topics of our lives,
yeah,
I think that it's not something that's forefront in people's minds going, oh, I'm not in touch with myself, or I've lost a piece of myself, or I need to rediscover my core values. That's not forefront in anyone's mind. Let's be real.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's so many, sometimes subtle as well as big signs and symptoms that our bodies and our minds give us that help lead us back home, so to speak. So in this article, I've put down the most common signs and symptoms that I see when people are out of alignment in themselves. So you can use it as a check-in and be like, okay, is this something that I'm experiencing? So then these are the next logical steps to be able to help yourself reconnect.
Awesome. I'm going to do it myself. I love the sound of this. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure chatting to you as always. Just remind the listeners where they can find you if they want to reach out to you.
Yeah, I'm on all of the usual spaces, online places, Facebook, Insta, YouTube, LinkedIn. All of my handles are the Michelle Powell. Beautiful.
Thank you. And thanks again. And yeah, it looks like there'll be another podcast coming soon. So watch this space.
Awesome.
Have a lovely day, Michelle.
You too, lovely.
Thank you for listening to the Happy Nurse podcast. If you've enjoyed today's content and would like to join the Happy Nurse community, head over to Facebook and check out the Happy Nurse AU Facebook page and request to join the Happy Nurse community. Also, check out happynurse.com.au for access to free downloads and subscription to my blog. See you soon, and in the meantime, remember to always offer yourself the same compassion that you so freely give to others. I'm excited to share with you all that I've contributed a chapter to the newly published Anxiety Relief Handbook. The handbook provides a unique window into 11 highly effective complementary therapies for you to sample on your quest to ease anxiety. The ebook is available on my website, happynurse.com.au/anxiety relief handbook.